Good morning, everyone. If you can't hear me clearly, please tell me to speak up. So again, I'm Joseph Shelton. I'm currently a doctoral student in the computer science department here. So I want to speak a bit about myself, and then I want to present the topic of my research, genetic and evolutionary feature extraction for biometric cybersecurity. So a little bit about me. I'm originally from Virginia. In high school, I was in Midlothian, Virginia, a pretty average-sized town. When I was in middle school, actually, I think the thing that kind of directed my path, during the summertime, there was nothing I was doing with my life, so I figured, okay, let's join this a couple of summer engineering programs. There's one called the Richmond Area Program for Minorities in Engineering. It was basic kind of overall engineering stuff. They had us build popsicle stick bridges. They had us doing Lego bot programming, some basic drag and drop stuff, but it was very interesting to me. They had us working around with the software. We could design houses, types that architects use. In fact, one interesting thing, me and my group, we were designing a stick bridge, and I kind of led the project, and I just had an unholy abomination of glue and popsicle sticks just kind of congealed. And yet somehow that got first place above everyone else who tried to neatly organize their sticks. And that was kind of interesting to me. I mean, it didn't seem like the most optimum design, yet this mishmash of ingredients formed to be the most structured bridge and the lightest somehow. So that was kind of cool. So in high school, when it was time to pick some elective courses, I was interested in computers, more so because at the time I just wanted to play around on games. So I figured, okay, I'll take this elective course, finish up my assignments, and for the rest of the time, I can browse online or do whatever. So it was a computer science course, programming. I had no idea what it was about, but they had us doing basic programs, C++, and it was something about creating my first program and having it run, making the machine do something that I told it to do rather than running tools that already existed on it that appealed to me. We designed more complex programs, but nothing too advanced. This is still high school at the time. We even got to play around with some networking stuff, had a station of routers and switches set up. That was fun to play around, a bit challenging for me at the time, but it was still interesting. So when it came time to pick a university, North Carolina A&T showed up first because I was told that it has a strong engineering department or focus on engineering. It was known for that, and at the time it was also not in Virginia, which was among one of my highest concerns at the time. I just wanted to get away from home. It was a little bit smothering. So computer science naturally appealed to me, and I had a bit of an advantage in my BS curriculum. And granted, I did have to try, definitely, but at the time, the BS program, honestly, I didn't have to try too hard at the time. I mean, I wasn't a straight A student by any means, but for most of the courses, as long as I reviewed the material, B's, A's. Also joined a couple of clubs, just some startup clubs, Society of Black Animators. It was a game design club. We never got past the board part, trying to design what the game was about, but it was still interesting, ACM, UPE. And then when I presented my senior project, I think this is where things kind of turned around for me. Dr. Dozier was at my presentation, and I'm not sure if he knew about me beforehand, but I guess it was something within my presentation that asked him to ask Dr. Bryan about my interest in the master's program. And I was just planning to get my BS and get out and get a job somewhere. But I figured, well, I mean, if you're offering this opportunity for me, I mean, besides just going out and finding work, why not try it? See what it's about. I mean, I figured if worst comes to worst, I could just always kind of quit. And now looking back at it, I realized that would have been a very bad idea. So then I started doing research in the master's program, and I had to start applying myself. It was no longer that I could just look over materials and just get it. I had to actually try. And the challenge was fun to me. Being able to publish papers and go to conferences, which were almost like paid for vacations. You got to meet experts in the field that you're in. You get to talk to them and just hear how much higher they are than you and how intimidating they are at first. So let me just speak a bit about my motivation for why I decided to attempt to attain my PhD. And this is one of the things my advisor stresses as well. So in 2013, the NSF took a survey, and on average, there are about 500 African-American PhDs currently working in the field of computer science, compared to the approximately 24,000 of other races. So I mean, there is a lack of, and if I'm capable, why not try this? But it's not enough just for there to be a necessity for it. Also felt myself being interested in doing research, problem solving, because back in the bachelor's program, a lot of the stuff that I worked on, I mean, there were solutions to what I was working on. It was just kind of, seeing how well I could do A or B. But now I had to take what I knew and apply it to problems that weren't yet solved. And that was kind of cool to me, especially when I could come up with a solution. There's been times when I couldn't yet come up with a solution, and failure is just as much of a part of research as anything. Try, and hopefully you get your results. It gave me a sense of fulfillment. I mean, my family is not scholarly in any sense. The highest degree my mother had was a high school diploma. My father, he got a GED. I mean, my mom owns a business, and my father, he's a manager in the warehouse that he works in. So I'd consider them successful, but the rest of my family, the highest they've ever gotten was high school. So I feel like I need to represent for my cousins, my younger cousins, give something for my uncles and aunts to brag about. Not to mention, Dr. Shelton kind of appeals to me. I like the way that sounds. And then here's just the survey if you're interested. You can just Google NSF 2013 survey. I couldn't find the 2014 information yet, but I imagine it hasn't changed too much. Now, so the research center I joined was CASIS, the Center for Advanced Studies in Identity Sciences, hosted at A&T. It also includes Clemson University, UNC Wilmington. It's focused in biometric identification, cyber identification, cybersecurity. When I came in, it was kind of focused on biometrics more so than anything, but lately it's been traveling towards cyber identification. Have a couple of my younger lab mates working on that stuff, very interesting stuff. Hopefully you'll get the chance to hear from them too. If not this semester, then maybe onwards. So, coming into CASIS, I had a week, maybe a week and a half to kind of get affiliated before I was given my task, a trial by fire task, if you will, to prove myself. I had to come up with a way to implement cumulative match characteristic curves, which is some form of evaluation to determine how effective some type of feature selection or feature extraction technique is for a biometric system. I'll talk a bit more about that later on. By doing that, just reading through the material, Dr. Dozier kind of held my hand a little bit. He told me what they were about, but I still had to figure out what it was this was all about. So by looking into the material, that helped me more than anything to get affiliated with what was up with CASIS, with biometrics. On your GRE, when you sign it, it'll say about 20 hours a week, maybe 10 hours a week. That's actually 20 plus N, where N is however long it takes to get the job done. There's been times when I've pulled all-nighters in the lab, generally because of mistakes I've made, but nonetheless, it's definitely, you do need to burn the midnight oil sometimes. You do need to put in, it's not a 9 to 5 by any means, but if you like what you're doing, then you won't even notice that you're putting in 40 hours, for example. Every week, we have weekly strategic research meetings. We update about our research progress. We can talk with other lab mates about some of their own research. So this was all very interesting to me. And by having Dr. Dozier as my advisor, he's definitely pushed me. He's pushed my lab mates. He's pushed all of us. But some people say that he's mean. But it is definitely worthwhile. I mean, I've had a successful master's project. My master's project was basically done after my first semester in the master's program. I started in the summer. My first paper could have been my master's project, but I just extended. I've been blessed to be awarded with the Outstanding Graduate Research Award 4 years running since I came into the master's program. Got a first runners-up award for a conference at CSCR. I was a master's student at the time. I got beat up by a PhD student. What can you do? I've been able to travel across the world. I've been able to travel to really exciting places here in the States. Some of the peers in my field recognize me. I've met some high-name figures in the field, those who've had tens of thousands of citations on their paper, the seminal works. So that's been awesome. So I keep mentioning my research, so why am I doing what I'm doing? Well, consider this. 2013, the Apple iPhone 5S was released. It had biometric authentication, and within 48 hours, a number of techniques have been envisioned to kind of bypass that biometric authentication. So not only does that show that biometrics is becoming more mainstream rather than just being used in, let's say, government agencies or what have you, but hackers are trying to get into this so that they can get people's information. There's already ways to get around this, so we need to beat the hackers. So, when we talk about feature extraction, there's a popular technique, the local binary patterns algorithm. It segments some type of biometric image into even-sized regions. From each region, you extract features, concatenate these features together to form some feature vector that represents whatever biometric image is being read in. So as long as images are uniquely textured, LBP should be able to create a unique feature vector that represents this individual, and that feature vector is just compared with feature vectors enrolled in whatever system to determine whether or not somebody is allowed access. So, given this technique though, there's a couple of questions you might want to ask yourself. Why exactly does the entire biometric image need to be segmented? I mean, granted, you look at it, you never know what type of image you'll get, so it's better safe than sorry to segment, but still, there's a lot of noise that could be included with that, or it could just be a lot of wasted effort. Why do all of these patches need to be the same uniform sizes? What decides that? So with that being said, one of the, I guess, our niche within the group, genetic algorithms, evolutionary computations, ways to evolve solutions for any given problems. It simulates natural selection. So with that in mind, we could actually evolve different types of LBP-based feature extractors, and we could evolve different feature extractors based on the dimensions and the numbers and locations of these patches. So down here you see a whole bunch of different LBP-based feature extractors. If you'll notice, it may be kind of hard to see, oops, but yeah, we see that these patches tend to gravitate towards the middle of the face, towards the iris, towards the periocular region, the area around the eyes. And that's very cool because we never gave these patches any constraints. We just let it run wild with the only, I guess the only driving force being how effective is it at recognizing individuals. And we get crazy looking solutions like this. Now remember I said it works for uniquely textured images, so facial images aren't the only way to go about it. Over the years we've done some crazy stuff. We worked with folks up in Michigan State University to try to identify the gender of Drosophila flies based off their wings. Of course, we've looked at iris recognition. Haven't been able to run across too many works that apply to LBP for iris recognition. It's also most of the time it's Gabor filtering, but it was cool just to see that applying our techniques towards the iris proved to be effective. I think one of the more craziest things we've tried, and this is still kind of like in its experimental stages, I'd consider it to be. I mean, we've published work on it, but we can actually look at how an individual moves their mouse, so we can get an image of that mouse movement and try to identify them based off of how they move that mouse. So that was kind of crazy to me. So this is just some of the results of applying GFI, that's what we're calling it, towards, let's say, a facial data set right here, compared with LBP. We look at the accuracies, the recognition accuracy of LBP. We look at the number of patches. This was just the best number of patches that LBP used to give the highest accuracy. And we see we got 94%, 95%. That's pretty cool. However, with our GFI variations, we see we get accuracies of 98% and 99% of our best. Even when we ran multiple feature extractors and got the average accuracy, they've still proven to be better than LBP. And we look at the number of patches we're using, it's less than half. That's half the size of the feature vectors, half the amount of space that's taken up in the database, half the amount of work that needs to be done for extracting. So yeah, I'd say GFI has a leg up on the traditional approach. So we have this GFI technique. Awesome. How can we apply it towards cybersecurity though? So we looked at a particular attack known as replay attacks. So in some biometric system, some deterministic feature extractor creates some feature vector that's sent along the network to a database to be compared with enrolled feature vectors. However, what a hacker can do is capture that information as it's going along the network and replay it at a later time to gain access. So if you think about string-based passwords, you can change a password, and smart cards, if those are taken, you can replace those. But if your biometric information gets stolen, there's not too much you can do about that. It's represented by a deterministic feature extractor. Whatever you pass in, you're always going to get the same thing. So how do we go about mitigating that? Well, we have this technique that already creates a set of feature extractors. They all have high recognition accuracy, but what we've been able to discover is that they're all unique, or that they most of the times create a unique feature vector. So now, what we're proposing is a system that uses a set of what we'll call disposable feature extractors. One feature extractor is selected anytime an individual is attempting to gain access. And a unique feature vector will be created for that individual and passed along a network. And within the database, now there's a set of enrolled feature vectors where each feature vector corresponds to a unique feature extractor. Now, if a hacker captures an older feature vector that was being passed through the network, that's okay, because what the system does is it disposes of any feature extractors that have already been used, regardless of whether or not an individual is correctly authenticated or not. So when a hacker attempts to replay this old feature extractor, we'll see that the system will be able to determine that a replay attack is in fact occurring. So let's take a look at that. So in our facial data set, we simulated a biometric system, and we recorded the similarity scores of legitimate access attempts. Those are in blue. And then we simulated every possible replay attack that could occur. So any older feature vector being replayed into the system while the system was using a current feature extractor. And we see the similarity scores are much worse for those replay attacks. And the fact that there's a clear gap between legitimate access and replay attacks suggests that this system can determine whether or not a replay attack is occurring if the score falls within this range, or if legitimate access is occurring, or if it falls within this gap. Maybe that suggests that the individual gave it a bad sample and that they should try to give another biometric sample. And down here, we further extended how many unique feature vectors we could recreate with our disposable feature extractors. So the later the rise, the more unique feature vectors can be created, and we see that compared with the traditional approach, our disposable feature extractors create many more unique feature vectors. So what conclusions can we draw from these results? Well, GPHI seems to outperform LBP when it comes to recognition accuracies for many different types of data sets. We did this for face, fly wings, iris, and GPHI has always continued to outperform the traditional LBP approach. It seems that we're able to evolve successful disposable feature extractors, and it looks like a mouse movement that could be kind of interesting. Got a couple of different people working on mouse movement and identification. So there's some things that I'm still working on. Whether I'll work on that maybe post-grad, or maybe I can finish that up while I'm still here, remains to be seen. But that's about all I have to say for my portion of my research. And now I'd like you all to listen to my advisor talk a little bit.
Amazing. Okay, we had the tech minute, right, last month. He should have been the one doing it. Very, very good job. Very good job. Yeah, and I think one of the other people that had played a big part in this is Kelvin Bryan, and basically in our department, you know, he talks and works with a lot of our freshmen and sophomores. He was also in senior design. And in terms of students going into our graduate program, he's very instrumental in saying, hey, this person is really good, this person is really good. So our faculty kind of rely on Kelvin to kind of go out and find talent for us. And that's exactly what happened. You know, Kelvin came to me and said, hey, you got to check this kid out. And went down and saw his presentation, and he had the right stuff. Then he's right, I gave him a hard problem, and the key thing is he got it done. And that's kind of what we look for, is students that can get things done. Now, taking them along the research, we got to learn how to read technical papers. And the other thing is we got to learn how to write. And it's just been a joy working with Joseph. I push my students hard. We originally started meeting at least 3 times a week. It was Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. This semester, we now meet 2 times a week because they figured a way to get away from 3 times a week. And he has really been also instrumental in guiding our younger researchers as well. I'm a chair, and I got to spend a lot of time doing chair things. And Joseph has been that kind of rock in our research group that we all kind of put our ropes around, and he anchors us. So God is good. He's really been a blessing. He's looking for positions. He okay. I can tell. Yeah. Okay. So there's well, he's going to be graduating in December, and so he's already this fall going to be an adjunct professor at St. Augustine's. We're trying to get him back here at A&T. He's applied to UNC Asheville, Voorhees, Virginia Union, and am I missing one? Okay, all right. And so I think wherever he goes, he's going to do an excellent job. You can see that he has a gift for presentation. He has a gift for connecting with people. He is also helping us in 163, and he's 160. Look, 165, and he's working with Ken Williams, and he's doing a little teaching there. So that's the thing. I was never afraid to push Joseph or any of my students. I have very high expectations, and when he says I'm mean, I say I'm mean because I think to them they feel as though I'm mean, and I see some other students out here, maybe they're nodding their heads. As long as my expectations are here and you're here, I do a lot of yelling, okay? As soon as you get above the expectations, then it's all nice and calm. And I'm actually a pretty nice guy, but until, he's nodding? Okay, so that's it, and that's what I've done. God is good. I've really been blessed. All the students that have come to cases have risen to the occasion despite me, and that's truly a blessing. Okay, thanks a lot. So I guess at this time we have questions. Any questions? I mean, you probably want to have more questions with him in his research, but any questions?
Can you share that sometimes when you're in love with your research can harm other things like delivering the courses? And so can you help Joseph share your navigation in figuring out how to make sure you're delivering in your coursework and still moving forward where you could end up losing time and do all-nighters in the lab? Because they're both important.
Right. Excellent question. Thanks for asking that. When I first started off, I had a bit of trouble with that. I was focused more so on research than coursework, and I saw that it was starting to affect me, particularly with some of my math courses. However, one thing that helps, coming up with a clear-cut schedule. It's easier to schedule coursework. You can kind of guesstimate how long it may take to study something, or how long you need to study in order to get whatever grade on a certain exam or quiz. When it comes to scheduling research, that's a little bit more difficult because when you're trying to solve a problem, it's hard to figure out how long that's going to take necessarily. So when you're coming up with the scheduling, it's always good to be tighter with the course side of things, and then with research, allow yourself a lot of open time, just to as a safety precaution. And it's not a perfect solution, but that's one way to help manage between course loads and research. I saw you raise your hand first.
Did you consider going somewhere else for your master's?
Ah, I looked at well, at the time I wasn't even interested in going for my master's. In fact, if I wasn't caught by Dr. Bryan, I would have just gone straight off into the workforce. So when I was told to go for A&T, personally, A&T was my only decision. However, I do recommend, because I've had students, worked with students who've come from different universities to come in for their masters, or even people who went to different schools for their masters to come in for their PhD. And I think it is kind of cool to get that variation of different learning techniques of different environments. But as for me personally, A&T was my choice. Right. You had a question?
Yeah, I got two questions. The first one is general. When you finish, okay, let me talk about myself. My biggest problem, when I finish my paper and I publish and I go and present it, when I'm on my way home, that's my worst time. Because I'm thinking, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's the hardest part of my everything I do. Just on my way back, I mean, what am I going to write next? You know what I'm saying?
Right, right.
Choosing the next topic. Have you ever had that problem?
Right.
Or how do you navigate that?
Okay, so when you're writing a paper, generally in your conclusion section, you write conclusion and future work. Do you personally have a strong future work section, or is it generally a couple of sentences?
Sometimes just to get by.
Right, right. Right. Well, my advisor's generally been pretty good with looking ahead. So I'll admit I had a lot of help from him. There's been times when I kind of had to come up with my own direction of future work, and he's approved or given major suggestions. But as for how to help with that, generally in your field, you want to do an overall search of problems. So in biometrics, how we move towards the security problem. I mean, because at first I was just focused on recognition, but you think about it, biometrics, that's meant for recognition, but you just kind of have to look at more general topics. So within this recognition space, topics such as efficiency or speed, security, these are all kind of bubbles. So it helps to kind of back up, look at the forest, and then narrow in on a tree. I hope that kind of makes sense.
Let me add this. This is another thing that we do in cases. In the fall, first thing, one of our first, well, I wouldn't say the first meeting, but certainly the first few meetings, what I do is I go out and get a large number of conferences that are going to take place for the whole year. And then we sit down as a group and we start mapping out the papers that we're going to write. And so we have our different research threads, and we start looking at topics, and we work that way as well. So that way we already know we have a series of papers that we're going to be writing, okay? And we go ahead and start writing it. And then what we try to do is we use the conferences as a way to kind of motivate us to get things done, right? Because we're trying to hit a deadline. And a lot of times we don't hit the deadline, and if not, we have another conference that we can submit to. And so from the faculty standpoint, that's what we try to do. We try to map out the whole year in the fall semester.
The other thing is when you went to the conference, you were coming back from the conference when you started getting records, right? So you had conversations, you had interactions while you were at the conference, and surely some of them, some of the other seminars you went, other presentations you went to, added some light for another angle on what you're doing to give you some other ideas. And so ultimately, you should be coming back and talking with your advisor about, okay, this is where we're going. And by the time you actually present, you're already in the midst of working on the next thing, right? And so you just make sure you're adding the insight to make sure that it's stuff that is really exciting and really does lead you forward. But have those conversations with your advisor.
The other thing I was talking about, I want to ask you is on the research, on the feature extraction. Do you have like a lab here, or how do you do it?
Okay, so All of my work is Java implemented. There's plenty of, I mean, any library you can think of, Java library, you can use it. Funny thing is, MATLAB's the preferred. It seems like MATLAB's the preferred tool for most biometrics things. But I feel like there's a lot more flexibility with using Java personally. And any machine, yeah, we have a computer lab in the IRC. Some of the top-notch machines, thanks to all the money that's brought in. Is that what you were referring to? Ah, yes, yes. Plug for Xtools, it's an application kind of developed here at A&T. So that helps greatly. Yes, sir.
Yes, Joe, I have seen you in class. I have seen you in many conferences, like international conferences, giving presentation. In fact, he's given a presentation at a conference that the impact factor is about 5. It means that many journal publications that you see, their impact factor is about between 1.5 to 3, but anyway, so 5 it means the best of the best. But my question to you is, just close your eyes and give us 2 things that JP could have done better. You could have done better that you have not done it, but you would suggest this to the next generation. All the students, how can we improve this process? Those who do in Java.
Okay, right. Okay, one thing that looking back on it, there's a lot of opportunities here at A&T. So, for example, a lot of Toastmasters, for example, working on your presentation skills. There's a lot of research-oriented poster competitions and such. The poster competitions here, I wish I would have put more effort towards. I generally just kind of present the research that I've worked on. So I think I would have put more effort towards, yeah, some of the research things around here at A&T, taking advantage of the services in Murphy Hall, so how to speak, things like that. So that's one thing. The other thing, I kind of wish that, so stuff like TED Talks, if you have the time, I wish I would have made the time to kind of start up a workshop here at A&T. I feel like that's something that you should be a part of, if not outright run yourself. So that would have been cool if I could have started up some type of student TED Talk or anything like that. So that's another thing I regret. So if you can kind of get together with a couple of other students and put something like that together, I think that'd be something that could help you out.
By the way, TED Talk is very inspiring, and I totally agree with you. I hope we can host TED Talk in our campus. Lake Forest has a, UNC has a, Duke has a stage. It's very unfortunate that we don't have.
What's going on here in Greensboro at Buck College is part of it. It's just that it's not happening at this time.
At this time, I like that.
Okay. So often I've heard students who say that I went and saw my advisor, I couldn't see my advisor, it's been
Okay.
a long while. So now can you kind of give both your perspective and advisor, but I'm not saying Jerry always is the elder, but what's the perspective that you want to convey to the students?
Okay, so you're referring to getting one-on-one time with your advisor or trying to find the time between both busy schedules?
Yes.
Right. Okay, so again, this is one of those areas where I'm kind of spoiled because even though my advisor is very busy, he does take time out specifically to make sure we all get one-on-one time. So it's hard for me to speak as if I know the struggle, but again, he is very busy, and you do kind of have to develop some sense of independence. So if I could say anything for that, I'd just say sometimes you might have to go outside of school hours if it's desperate enough. Call this man or woman up at their house late at night, get their number somehow. And yeah, also I guess, I can't speak from the advisor side, I'll let him speak about that, but there's some thoughts that I have.
Okay, all right. So you want to hear from me concerning this? What I try to do is just make myself available. So everyone has my cell phone number. They text message me. And I'm probably the one calling them, at midnight, saying, hey, where are we at with this? And it's so, a lot of times we may not always be able to meet face to face, but we're always talking on the phone. When I'm in the office, a lot of times they'll come in. It's an open door policy. They come in and talk. A lot of times it's usually could be 15, 20 minutes because they just want to know, when they make a decision, the decisions that the students make are correct about 95% of the time. All they want to do is just hear, is this right? Or what do you think? And a lot of times you hear them out for about 15, 20 minutes and you say, proceed, you're doing just fine. But yeah, that is one thing that we do is, like I said, we meet at least 3 times a week, okay? And then for, depending on if we're working on a thesis or something like that, we'll meet on, whenever we need to get the writing part down.
Yes, ma'am.
I just had a question. I'm an undergraduate junior here, and so far I've had experience with presentations, and we are getting into reading more technical papers.
Mhm.
But how would you go about, how did you adapt to having to actually write and publish papers?
Okay. Dr. Dozier said something about learning how to write. That is a very tedious and time-consuming process, and in 4 years, I've gotten just a little bit better at it to the point where I may not get completely chewed out. But for me personally, when it came to writing, it really was just practice and practice. Dr. Dozier has a recommendation, he can speak more about this, to record yourself reading a paper. I probably should start taking his advice as my advisor. That's something that I've yet to do because I don't like the sound of my own voice. But he has a lot of writing tips, probably more so than me. He kind of drilled certain practices into me when it came to writing, so he's probably the best person to speak to about that.
Okay, really? No, I think what I try to tell the students is to try to, as much as possible, to have an out-of-body experience. And what I mean by that is you've got to be able to read your paper the way someone else is going to read it. Because a lot of times what we do is we have a symbol system in our head. Okay, and we know what they're ideas, and ideas aren't attached to any language, right? And so what we do is we take these ideas and we spill them out on a sheet of paper, right? But what we write down are just symbols encoded in something that looks like English. Now you can go back and you can read it, and it makes perfect sense to you because you already have the connection between the symbol that's on the page that looks like English and the symbol in your head. But you give yourself about a couple of weeks, maybe a month, and you go back and you read that, and it's gibberish to you because the connection between the symbol on the page and the symbol in your head is gone. So what we have to do is we have to basically take a step back and read the English as if it were really English. And so we have to have an out-of-body experience. That's a really, really difficult thing to do, and it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort. I don't have it down, and I've been trying to do this for a long, long time. So writing is something that you just got to keep working at it, and you got to keep trying to have that out-of-body experience, and you just got to keep working at it.
Yes, sir.
I also would say, in comment, that I know in the lab, Dr. Dozier tells you all that in reading, it's not read unless you do it 5 times. Mm-hmm. So I've seen a lot of the students in the cases lab become better writers because they spend a lot of time reading technical things, that they learn how people in the field express themselves, and that's helped out a lot. But they do spend a lot of time reading papers and all that yelling that Dr. Dozier does. You do when they don't read it, they come in and they try to fake the funk, and it becomes obvious that they have to put the time in the reading.
So let's talk about the yelling, because it keeps coming up, so I've got to get there a little bit more. If you're exposed to yelling, that means that you've also built a skin to take what's going on in the right context.
Right.
So help me understand that, and then help the whole audience understand what you see as the value thereof of not having that become something that's damaging your self-esteem.
Right. Okay. So, yelling. And by the way, I got to say, after the first year, he stopped raising his voice so much. He'll just keep that same tone of voice, which is actually a lot more intimidating, but that's neither here nor there. But as for the kind of rough treatment, as for not holding anything back, being very blunt, when you go present at conferences, you're standing in front of experts who are looking for any excuse at all, any typo in your presentation, any slip of the word, to jump on you and call you out on your mistake, to deliver some type of research jeopardizing point. So by week, I'm sorry? Right. Some type of flaw. And there may be things that you miss that are minor, but standing in front of these experts, it helps if you've had weekly talks with a person who's talking to you as if you were standing in front of those experts time and time again, so that you can talk back to them, not with any kind of stutter in your voice or anything like that, but talk steadily and talk coherently. So that definitely helps. Now, as for self-esteem and whatnot, it comes back to you kind of have to push yourself. You have to better yourself. Otherwise, yeah, your self-esteem can take a dive if you're not pushing and you're constantly being berated. But I mean, that goes for anything that you really want to get good at or anything that you try. You either push yourself or it's going to hit you. So that's what I'd have to say about that. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I guess the thing is, and I've told all my students this, you know, when you're coming through our program, okay, I know that you are going to graduate and you are going to leave A&T. I have no idea what kind of working environment you're going to be in. So I'm going to be the toughest person that you ever come in contact with. Because once you get out there in the real world and people start hitting you with stuff, you're going to stand and not fold. Okay? And so, yes, I'm very, very hard on my students for a reason. Because when they get out, out of A&T, they're going to have to stand on their own. And when it's time for them to stand, you know, I want them to be successful. I don't want anyone coming to them, giving them, you know, a hard time, and then they're taking 2 steps back. If anything, if they try to give one of my students a hard time, they're going to take 2 steps forward. Case in point, the beacon talk. This is interesting, and it turned out really good. Okay, so Joseph is giving a talk to Michigan State, University of Texas at Austin, University of Washington, and the University of Idaho. So every week we kind of get together and we have these little research talks, and they're filled with PhDs, okay? And if you're a PhD and you're going to try to attack one of my students, you got another thing coming, because they're going to come right back at you. And so what happened is, you know, he gave a wonderful talk, just like he did here, and you had this person, Dr. Ian Dworkin, from zoology, that kind of quipped, you know, oh, ha 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 ha, that's really nice. Can you determine the sex of a fly based on their fly wing? And everybody there, what? They laughed. And then Joseph stood up and said, well, let's think about this. Fly wings have texture, and this is a texture-based method, so yes, we can do it. Oh, and by the way, can you send me your data set? Hush fell over the crowd. And so what happened, Ian Dworkin sent us his data set. We got a little grant out of it, about $55,000. We got a journal paper. And we got something else going on in zoology at Michigan State University. But it's all because where I think a younger or a PhD student that didn't have that would take 2 steps back. Our PhD students don't. They're coming right back at you. So you better think before you say something.
So how many journal articles have you been able to pull thus far in your education?
All right. With
Not the paper ones.
right, just journals. Right. With me as the first author, 2 or 3. I need to look at my CV. With my name on the paper, most of these are second or third position. I'd say about 4 or 5 more, roughly, at least that.
And then he's got book chapters, at least 2 book chapters.
And so where did you apply?
Where did I? So,
Sound like you are applying for places that are fitting of your ability.
all right.
You don't have to answer. Just think about
I do kind of want to answer though. Even teaching, when you apply for a position in academia, there's research involved and teaching involved.
it. I know a little bit about that.
And I don't feel so confident in my abilities of the teaching side. Research-wise, I feel confident, but I wanted to.
Teaching is the same as presenting.
Okay.
It's the same.
Okay.
So if your goal is to have your audience receive the information and use it in a way, you're still preparing, you're organizing it. It is very similar. They're very related.
Correct.
And so when you interview for a faculty position, your presentation, your department that's interviewing you is looking at how you present your technical talk to see if you've been effective at teaching your audience the content, because they're not necessarily in your field.
Mm-hmm.
So they're judging, will that person be a solid teacher because of how you're presenting your research. So you don't actually have to worry, you personally don't have to worry about your ability to teach. You have to care about the students, you have to be able to express and communicate information that is new in a clear, effective way and help, but you have to care.
Right.
And then you have to, so you'll be fine with that. But I would suggest that if you're wanting to make sure your research can be nurtured in a way it needs to move forward, and you want to make sure you're in a place that teaching is valued, you want to make sure the landscape you're choosing for university to apply to is aligned with that.
And where should he apply?
Well,
Okay. Yeah, we want him to apply right here. I think he would make a really good.
Joseph, you going somewhere else and then coming back years is also an option. It's just really, you just want to make sure that the environments you're applying to fit what you're trying to do with your academic career. Because you're wanting academia, so you wanted to nurture that because you still have things you've got to deliver in the midst of that run.
Mm-hmm.
So
Thank you.
you've got to apply to some other person.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I came in a little late, so I don't know if you already talked about it, but I do research, and I was curious as to how much of your work is given to you by your advisor versus how much of your work do you start on your own?
Okay. Well, I'd say it's not so much a 50-50 or 60-40 type of deal, but it's kind of a continued working. So my advisor will come up with some type of idea, just some high-level concept. Hey, this might be something cool. This might be something you want to look into. And from there, I can kind of climb my way up different vines as to how to best proceed. A couple of topics I just kind of came up with off the top of my head. But for the most part, it's kind of, it's a working relationship. Even, honestly, even after I graduate, I'll still probably be contacting him with maybe ideas that I want him to think about, or if he has anything that he doesn't have time to work on that, hey, maybe he might want somebody else to work on. Well, if there are no further questions, thank you for your time. Thanks for coming by.